All right, everyone, welcome back to our church and society, church and culture, church and state, whatever you want to call it. All right, we're going to talk about church and society. In the history of Christianity, we see a tension between the ideals of purity and unity. Christian traditions that have highly valued unity have generally accommodated to the surrounding culture, became sacramental, and engendered close ties to the state. Conversely, traditions that have highly valued purity have emphasized personal Christianity, holiness, and separatism. This played out in the four different relationships between church, Christ, and culture. There's a famous book by Niebuhr called Christ and Culture, and he puts forth these four views of how Christ in the state, Christ in the surrounding culture, or we can say, how do Christians interact with the surrounding culture and community that they're in? So he kind of puts forward a spectrum. In this spectrum, there's unity. On this side, the society and the culture become closer and closer to one. So something like Israel would be a unity thing. And on this side is purity. So there's more and more separatism. So you think about the Puritans, what do they do? It's my Siri. The Puritans, what do? They separate. So you can think of that kind of spectrum, and he kind of has four, as we'll see. Issues in unity and purity in the church, in church history. There's state church model. So basically all of Europe until the last, 150 years did this state church model. So the state had a church. So in the UK, the state and the church, the Anglican Church, are together. They inform one another. There's a state church. In Germany, until very recently, there was a state church called Lutheranism, the Lutheran Church. So there's a relationship between state and church. Magisterial, that just kind of means that the church, that they can inform how the state will run, that like a minister could be a magistrate. He could be running for office. The church enforces spiritual laws and practices. They had kind of a sword authority, which oftentimes modern churches don't. Okay, purity is the free church model. So if you're kind of an evangelical, not all evangelicals, because within Anglicanism, there's like a form of evangelicalism. But really, a majority, like Southern Baptists, the PCA, they have a free church model. That means that the state doesn't tell the church what to do. Church is separate from the state. Okay, here are the four models that Niebuhr eventually comes up with, kind of to give you a history of how Protestants thought about this, how it kind of helpful. Okay, the first one is church against culture. Fundamentalist, Anabaptist, Christ in the world, don't mix. Separate is best. So, you think about the church against culture, fundamentalist, Anabaptist. If you're a Baptist, you come from Anabaptist. That just means to baptize again. You think about this paradigm. Where are they? Clearly on the purity side. Church equals culture. So this model says, or this kind of thinking, Niebuhr isn't saying these are the four options. Niebuhr's kind of saying this is what people do. He's just kind of doing a historical survey. Christ equals church, or Christ equals culture, produces, that means the church produces culture, art, politics, education, war, poetry, philosophy, forced or assumed Christianity, not conversionism, ideal. So the state the church kind of enforces this. Kind of, if you think of the medieval church, that's what's happening. Church equals. So here, where are they? The unity, clearly. Christ and culture in paradox. This is the famous from Martin Luther, and it's a famous kind of concept. Lutheran never resolved. Authority is blended, both scripture and the world, depending on what information you need. So what's going on here? My arm is broken. I go to the doctor. My cousin has rejected Christ. I go to the priest. So a society is mixed, and the authority within that society is mixed, and different people have different authorities within the society. Christ transforms culture. This is the Calvinist view. In light of the gospel, the light of the gospel goes out to the nooks and crannies of the broader world. We are a subset, but we want to see the gospel penetrate all humanity. So, if you think about the early church is a subset within the Roman Empire, but according to the Calvinist model, what do they want to happen? They want to see that subset eventually spread to all the nooks and crannies. Scriptures speak to church and life, but they also speak to art, business, philosophy, and politics. So, if you think how the Calvinists think, they're saying an individual will eventually develop a Christian worldview. And when they have that Christian worldview, everything they do, whether it's politics, whether it's business, whether it's being a doctor, it will be informed by that Christian worldview. They'll be Christian businessmen. So if you think about the difference between the Lutheran and the Calvinist would say the best doctor is the Christian doctor. The Lutheran would say, no, the best doctor is just the best doctor. You see the difference? Here, they're thinking my Christian worldview is going to inform everything I do. Here, they're saying different people have different authorities. All right. Until next time.